This is Ahval Online, meeting point of accurate news and free comment on the current affairs of Turkey. Welcome to our podcast series.
Hello, this is İlhan Tanır, Ahval editor, and today I am joined by Timur Göksel, senior editor-at-large at Ahval and former spokesperson for the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Lebanon. We are going to discuss Idlib today, the hot topic. Mr. Erdogan has been talking about Idlib, as well as many other countries are discussing the situation. Today, just about an hour ago, Pentagon Chief Mark Esper said U.S. does not plan to provide any kind of air cover, air support for Turkey in Idlib. Since last Monday, we had this discussion. A lot happened. 36 Turkish soldiers killed in Idlib. Can you please tell us what have you seen? What do you think has changed over the week? Whether Mr. Erdogan is gaining ground in Idlib, whether he is getting closer to his ambitions in Idlib?
Seeing in about Idlib now is that Mr. Erdogan is stalling for time or waiting for time for his proposed meeting with Mr. Putin, with President Putin, which is supposed to be on the 5th March. But it's still not very sure that it will be. But okay, that's what is proposed to be. And until that time, Turkey is using some military action in Idlib region, but that is mostly to appease, to please the Turkish public, which has been very terribly shaken over the loss of the soldiers, so many of them. And now what is very also interesting in Turkey is even the media, that pro-media government that's been very supportive of Mr. Erdogan, is now blaming Russia for what happened in Idlib and the death of the soldiers. So we are in a waiting period, but in the meanwhile, what is interesting in Turkey nowadays, as compared to the previous experiences or misadventures like this before, this time even the pro-government media is accusing and blaming the Russians for the death of Turkish soldiers in Idlib, this high number of soldiers. So at the moment, it's a sort of a waiting period, but in the meanwhile, to comfort the Turkish public, to ease their anger, there's a fury in Turkey about this loss of these soldiers. What we are now seeing is that the Turkish pro-media government is reporting mostly about the physical damages Turkey is inflicting on the Syrian regime forces. How many of their tanks have been destroyed, 2 of their planes have been shut down, or whatever. So we are all the parties are now at the holding position, waiting for this meeting between Mr. Putin and Mr. Erdogan.
Today, Mr. Erdogan, March 2nd, Monday, Mr. Erdogan gave this very fierce talk, and he again threatened, and he asked Syrian forces to withdraw from the Turkish outpost. Otherwise, he added, heads of Syrian forces will be no more. And when we look at his fierce speeches in recent days, over the weekend and today, it looks like his rhetoric actually is even escalating. He basically is saying that he is not going to leave and he is going to, send even more reinforcements. I know it's very difficult, and this Turkish government is not the most transparent government in the world. But do you think that Turkey is ready to go all-out war if Syrian forces didn't withdraw, or Mr. Erdogan looks for some kind of bargain on March 5 with Mr. Putin? That's why he is escalating.
Well, what we are seeing is a very strong rhetoric. I think this is a part of Erdogan's policy making. I don't think he's going to start anything major before he meets with Mr. Putin. So I think, as I said, although there are some actions on the ground, all the parties involved in this very deadly situation in Idlib, they are all waiting for the outcome of this meeting on 5 March. I don't think we are going to see anything major before that. And certainly I don't expect Turkey to launch a major operation before that meeting.
So U.S. Pentagon chief today clearly said U.S. doesn't plan any kind of air cover for Idlib. Was this a surprise for Mr. Erdogan, or this was what basically he deserved with his policies over the last several years?
Well, look, the Americans have a dual approach to this thing. The politicians, especially Mr. Jeffrey, their UN envoy, and their Syria envoy, who's a very pro-Turkish official, have been providing the Patriot, U.S. Patriot missiles as Turkey wants in a very strange way. But the Pentagon, of which Mr. Esper is the head of, are totally against providing any U.S. missiles to Turkey, because that will get them involved in a combat with the Syrians and with the Russians, and they don't want to get involved in this. So what Mr. Esper said today reflects the view of Pentagon, but that doesn't reflect the view of the U.S. Political side, mostly the State Department. Mr. Jeffrey is expected to come to Turkey today. Let's see what comes out of that meeting. But as I said, I don't expect Americans to provide anything unusual to Turkey. And for me, the important event in the coming days will be the Putin-Erdoğan meeting, nothing more than that.
I understand. So apparently this activation time of the S-400s is just next month, and we expect Russian personnel to do this activation. At least they will oversee, I believe. There is very little information about this engineering side of the S-400s. So we talk mostly about assumptions, but as last year and repeatedly have been told by Russian and Turkish officials, April is the delivery time or activation time for S-400s. Under the circumstances, whatever will come out from March 5 summit between Mr. Putin and Mr. Erdogan, how this S-400s, activation is going to play out as the Turkish and Russians relations are doing not very well. And as you mentioned in the beginning, Turkish pro-AKP media and many commentators, pro-AKP talking heads, have been attacking Russia fiercely, apparently reflecting the government's policy or thinking on this.
Well, look, I mean, okay, April, it will be the activation date. But if you ask me, activation date doesn't mean using date. I mean, should I think that the Russians will agree Turkey to use the S-400s, let's say, against the Russian planes or the Syrian planes over Syrian territory. I doubt that very much. I mean, okay, it can be activated technically, but politically, what the decision will be is I'm very curious to find out about it also. It's like the Americans. They can give you missiles, but they won't let you use it. So what? I mean, having missiles like we have in our storages in Ankara or around Ankara is something else. Having them ready for use is something else. But to be able to use them is totally something else, because I'm expected to believe that Turkey will freely fire its S-400s against Syrian and Russian air forces over Syrian airspace. I don't expect that. I don't believe that.
So my final question today, AKP government spokesperson Ömer Çelik gave his briefing, and as an argument for Turkish incursion and Turkish operations inside Idlib, he said that if we don't fight in Idlib, we are going to face attacks in Kilis, in Hatay, in Urfa, and all that. So that is why we are fighting in Idlib. What do you say to this argument?
Well, I read the same argument. As a Turk who loves his country, I love to hear his reasoning for such a list. What? Turkey is a hopeless country? Is Turkey so weak that these people will be coming over our borders to Kilis and what have you? No, I mean, I need more explanation of this. This sounds very dramatic and very, provocative, let's say. But I don't see how the crowds, if the Syrian regime, backed by the Russians and the Iranians, take over Idlib, how they will be able to cross the Turkish border and attack Turkish targets. No, I'm sorry. I find that very hard to believe.
I understand. Thank you so much, Timur Göksel, Senior Editor-at-Large at Ahval and former spokesperson in Lebanon for United Nations. Hope to talk to you soon again.
Okay, then. Bye.
You can follow Ahval News Online podcast series through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, and Spreaker. All you need to know about Turkey is here, for your ears, mind, and attention. Thank you for listening to our podcast.